The term of the Tax Ombud, Judge Bernard Ngoepe, came to an end on the 30th of September 2022 after nearly a decade. The retired judge has been the Ombud since the inception of that office of the Tax Ombud back in 2013. Now, the office was set up to improve the South African tax administration system. Justice Ngoepe joining us now to tell us about what he has seen during his term of office. Justice Ngoepe, as I ask you the first question, I'm going to also allow you the opportunity to just explain to viewers why you are appearing as though you're wearing green lipstick. Hopefully they'll get over that once you explain it.
Good morning to you and to your listeners. Yes, I must apologize for that. It has been technically put onto my lips. I don't know what caused it to be there. Many technicians have tried to remove that, but I'm sure somebody from somewhere, from Mars or Jupiter, is targeting me. I don't know.
All right. I think now that we've got that out of the way, hopefully the viewers are not going to be distracted by that. Let's kick off the conversation by explaining the role of the Tax Ombud. What is the role of this office?
Well, the Tax Ombud is there really to protect taxpayers against any possible excesses by SARS. You know, SARS has got immense powers to try and collect tax, but in the process, human being human, sometimes they make mistakes. And when they've made mistakes, the taxpayer is entitled to approach the Office of Tax Ombud with a complaint. And the Tax Ombud then investigates that complaint. If it is valid, then if they finds in favor of the taxpayer or against the taxpayer. But it's an entirely neutral position that I would take as the Tax Ombud. But it facilitates the collection of tax because it delivers to you taxpayers who feel satisfied that whenever they've got complaints, they've got a recourse, and once their problems are resolved, then they will be tax compliant.
Justice Ngoepe, looking at the complaints, and I will simply make this observation based on what I would have picked up on social media whenever the tax filing season comes around, people still complaining about their refunds being withheld. Do you think that your office has been visible enough during your tenure?
Well, it has been. In fact, at some point, I decided to launch an investigation, a comprehensive investigation into that particular complaint, including, for example, the complaint that people are not being refunded for diesel disbursements. And an investigation was carried out, and to a large extent, the complaints were justified. And many people, as a result, had their refunds paid back to them. And SARS did put in place a mechanism. They assured me that it would resolve that problem. Whether that mechanism will resolve the problem completely, I don't know. But at some point, I got the impression that there's been some alleviation of the problem to some extent. But there is still some distance to go.
Yeah. Let's talk about the independence of your office. You have called on Parliament to fast-track this legislation. Why is this top of mind for you? What kind of challenges have you had to confront?
Yes, to understand the problem properly, one must remember, as I've said, that the Tax Ombud investigates complaints against SARS. Now, consider this. The Tax Ombud is financially dependent on SARS. The Commissioner of SARS is the accounting officer in respect of the Office of the Tax Ombud. Now, how can it be so? How can it be good governance when you are financially dependent on somebody against whom you must conduct some investigation? It's poor governance, and I've raised that issue several times. And I got the impression that somewhere in National Treasury there were some people who liked the status quo, who liked this idea that the office of the Tax Ombud should be within the financial pocket of SARS, whom we just got to investigate. And unfortunately, you do find people of that disposition in high positions, and they have got access to people of influence. And I didn't make much progress until I turned to Parliament to try and expedite the process, and hopefully they will. And it is a sorry state of affairs in this country, for example, Xoli, because sometimes we put on paper institutions which are supposed to protect the people, their rights and so forth, but we fail to capacitate those institutions. We decapacitate them. We don't give them resources. And secondly, sometimes we appoint as head of those institutions people who are not competent enough to carry out the jobs. It's a sad state of affairs. So it does not only affect the Office of the Tax Ombud, but for now, I'm championing the cause of the Office of the Tax Ombud. And I left the office while that milestone had not yet been attained. And in my view, the work is cut out for the next Tax Ombud. The next Tax Ombud is enjoined to pursue that point. And if he or she were to abandon that point, I'll feel that he or she would have betrayed taxpayers. They deserve of protection. And the only way to give them proper protection is to make this office, as I described, structurally independent. An office that investigates SARS cannot financially be made dependent on SARS. Even the former Inspector General of Intelligence, Dr. Dindo, made that point abundantly clear before the Zondo Commission.
Yeah.
And the Constitutional Court also made that point abundantly clear. You cannot financially depend on an institution you are supposed to investigate. And yet, this situation is being perpetuated at the Office of the Tax Ombud. And I'm of the view that it's high time that this matter is resolved.
Justice Ngoepe, you lead me to ask a follow-up question in relation to this then. Are you in any way suggesting that your office may have been starved of funds deliberately, and that then also leads to another question, that operationally, how has it been for your office to operate with a little bit of independence, but also importantly, what will the implications be if the Tax Ombud continues to rely on SARS for finances?
It's a matter of perception to the public. People can never have sufficient confidence in you if they know that you get your supper from somebody you are supposed to investigate. It's a matter of, it undermines the confidence of the office. Well, you asked about whether we did have financial restraints. No, mercifully not. You know why? Because I worked with 3 previous commissioners of SARS. They've been remarkably cooperative. They never in any way put any hindrance around the activities of the Tax Ombud. But that's not how things work. What if tomorrow you find a malicious commissioner? A malicious commissioner can tomorrow, by the way, Xoli, shut down the Office of the Tax Ombud because, can you believe it? Even our rent is paid for by SARS. Our salaries are paid for by SARS. We are 100% dependent on SARS. But like I say, I've enjoyed good working relationship with all previous, including the current commissioner. They've always been cooperative, and I hope they will continue to be so until such time that the office is entirely on its own. I can't believe that one time when I had to go and address Parliament, my ticket to Cape Town, for it to be bought, it had to be approved by a commission of SARS.
Wow, my goodness. Justice, I'm going to ask you to remain exactly where you are. We're going to take a short break because when we return, I'd like to pick up on the state of the economy. You know, I don't have to explain that to you, but more importantly, the reluctance of people to want to pay tax. What challenges have been encountered there by your office? We'll continue the conversation in a bit. Let me pick up on the state of the economy. People may generally be reluctant to pay their taxes. It might be for a number of reasons. People thinking that, you know what, there's just too much corruption in this country. Why should we feed these politicians, greedy politicians? But is that something that your office deals with at all, or is that in the ambit of SARS itself?
No, we are affected by that, and certainly we've got the right to have a say about how tax is being used, because like I told you earlier on, our task is to facilitate the collection of tax, is to make sure that people are treated well so that they can pay tax. I addressed a body, I think government accountants last time, and I told them that the findings by the Zondo Commission has hurt us. It has hurt us. It hurt me as the Tax Ombud. It has hurt my staff. It has hurt many people because we kept all these years. We kept on encouraging people to pay tax because, Xoli, people must pay tax. Otherwise, how are we going to build schools and so forth and so on? But we have been facilitating the collection of tax only to find that, as I put it, we were leading taxpayers to a slaughterhouse because they take their last cent there only for that money to be stolen. And that has been confirmed by the Zondo Commission that lots and lots of monies of taxpayers' money have been stolen. And in that sense, it discourages people from paying tax.
Yeah. What about people who deal in foreign currency? Justice Ngoepe, there are a number of business people, and I suppose one case in mind that is very public right now is that of President Cyril Ramaphosa, who says, I'm in the business of selling game, and sometimes these purchases are made in foreign currency. Do you deal with those problems, and what might your opinion be about the situation that the president finds himself in?
I want to express myself on the president matter, the Pala matter, and in passing I should mention that, if I'm allowed to say so, I'm one of the people who declined to go and be part of the assessment team because as the Tax Ombud I felt I should not be going down there to be involved in that. But
why is that, if I could ask?
Why what?
Why did you decline to be part of the team that would have gone to assess this matter?
Well, for once, there might have been other reasons, but for one thing, the request came at a time when I was still in the office as the Tax Ombud.
Okay.
And I didn't want to find myself, while I'm wearing the capacity of Tax Ombud, to be going down to be involved in the investigation of such things. I didn't think it would have been appropriate for me to apportion myself between my duties as the neutral, independent Tax Ombud and then to find myself being engaged in that kind of inquiry.
Makes sense.
It would have been inappropriate.
Makes sense. But I interrupted you there. You were still explaining people who deal in foreign currency. Do you deal with those matters at all? And just how frequent do they come to you with problems? And what kind of problems do they present?
No, we never had such complaints or such challenges. People coming to us with such challenges.
All right. Let me then veer away from tax matters, Justice Ngoepe, and deal with matters that surround the judiciary. I know that you've just completed your term of office as a tax ombud, but the bottom line is that you're also a judge in this country. Yes, a retired judge, which means that government can call on you whenever they have problems. How do you see or how do you feel about the constant attacks on the judiciary in South Africa lately? And in particular, this is done by politicians, some of them who have held high office and who swore allegiance to the Constitution. Does that sit well with you as a judge?
I want to distinguish very clearly between two concepts. One, criticizing the judiciary. The other, insulting the judiciary. I would be most uncomfortable with anybody who embarks on a process to insult the judiciary in a wholesale fashion, because in the end it diminishes the credibility of the judiciary. And the judiciary, which some of us work very hard to try and make credible. You mentioned me having been a judge. You could have added that indeed as Judge President of North and South Gauteng High Courts for many years, for nearly 14 years. And one of my endeavors was to try to bring back or to create confidence in the public about the credibility of the judiciary, because the previous judiciary was not ours. It belonged to other people. Now we have constructed a new judiciary which people must confidence in. And you do find that somewhere along the way we embark on a wholesale exercise of insulting the judiciary for no good cause. There's no need to insult the judiciary because it's the only judiciary you have. And that's the only judiciary you're going to turn to in due course. By all means, criticize the judiciary. We don't say people shouldn't criticize the judiciary. Criticize the judiciary as you wish, and for whatever reason, but don't destroy the judiciary.
Don't destroy the judiciary, but I wonder how much of that is being done by members of the judiciary themselves. It goes without saying, Justice Ngoepe, that there are some judges who have question marks around them and have been for a very long time. And one case in point is the judge president in the Western Cape. Surely that is something that should have been dealt with a long time ago.
But the disciplinary of judges does not lie in the hands entirely of the disciplinary of judges does not lie entirely in the hands of the judges. It lies in the hands of the Judicial Service Commission. Judges can't discipline themselves, Xoli. That there was a great deal of wisdom behind separating the issues and say there shall be an independent body which shall be called the Judicial Service Commission, which people wrongly term and again call Judicial Services Commission. There are not many services. It's just one service, Judicial Service Commission. The Judicial Service Commission is the body that takes the disciplinary action against judges. And if there is to be any criticism, let it be leveled at that mechanism, controlled by the JSC and ultimately by Parliament.
Are they adequate? Are they up to the task?
Sometimes you get the impression that things are moved just too slow. And it may well be that we from time to time we should re-evaluate all the mechanisms that we have for resolving our problems and see whether they work efficiently and improve them. Anything that's created by men is not perfect. It needs to be re-looked at from time to time. And you get a sense that sometimes things move just too slowly. But that's a different thing altogether.
Well, now that you've taken the conversation that route of the JSC, how effective have they been? If you just look at the number of interviews that have been held, whether it be the lead up to the ultimate appointment of the now Chief Justice who is in office, including the current. I'm merely asking about whether or not commissioners in that JSC even prepare for these interviews, because what we have seen, at least in the past, is the entire process degenerating into a political farce.
Well, Xoli, sometime last year, I was asked, I think by the Office of the Chief Justice then, to conduct an orientation program for new members of the JSC. That was last year. I did my best because I had been at JSC for about 14 years before I retired. I did my best, and one of the issues I raised was to deal with the question of how to interpret the criteria, how to interview people. For example, that you don't insult people. Now, I don't know. I don't know whether that orientation worked well, but because people still have got complaints. But only let us say this. I said earlier on that wherever the human element is involved, there may be some mishaps, and we cannot use computers to interview judges. We must use human beings. The biggest problem about the JSC is that, as you know, it comprises, among others, members of parliament from various political parties. Members should remember that when they get into the meeting of the JSC to interview candidates, they don't represent their political parties. They represent the interests of the country. The role that you play in there is not for the benefit of political party. I think if we can get that right, we shall have addressed the problem for quite some distance. And this was one of the points I made during the orientation program I conducted for new members of the Judicial Service Commission. That is the problem. And then, of course, what follows thereafter, if you go in there with the view that you are going to represent the people of South Africa, not your political party, that would be a good starting point.
Justice Ngoepe, let me conclude the conversation with a question around the worries in the country right now that we might be placed on the infamous grey list, and owing to problems of money laundering or just the basic failure to deal decisively with corrupt acts. Is that something that the Office of the Ombud, you think, should worry itself about, that the country could be placed on the grey list? And if so, the implications for tax collection?
Well, the implications will be dire for the country. The implications will be that we might find it difficult to develop ourselves economically, and you know all the consequences thereof. The office of the Tax Ombud would be concerned about that, because its contribution is precisely to try and make sure that our country develops economically and the like. But there are many issues that needs to be addressed. Don't take me to the book that I've written, Xoli, because I'll say to you, go and read it. The book that I've just had published about sometime in July with the title Rich Pickings Out of the Past, that book takes you back into history, and it asks the question, what happened in 1994? Where did we drop the ball? Did we learn anything from the past as to how commitment, for example, the champions of apartheid were to that evil system? Do you know why they managed to keep us down, the millions and millions of us black people down for over many years? It was because they were committed to the cause that they believed in, although it was ill-advised. Did we show the same commitment after taking over government after 1994? Did we show the same commitment that they showed towards improving the quality of their people, of the African people, once they took over the government? Did we even begin to show half the commitment that they did once we took over the government in 1994? We didn't. Had we done so, Xoli, had we shown the commitment that they showed towards improving the quality of our people in 1994, we would be far better than we are today. And those are the issues that I raised in the book. I'm asking the question, why? What happened? What went wrong? And if you were to ask me, why did we not show that commitment, I will say to you, go and read the book that I wrote. And I'm not getting any proceeds from the book, Xoli, by the way, when I say this, because I've donated my entire royalties to Diabetes South Africa in order to help fight this atrocious disease that's debilitating millions of our people.
Justice Bernard Ngoepe, let me thank you very much for your time.